Actually, I had a chance to talk to somebody who works at Ohio State kind of off the record this week. And I asked behind the scenes, are there discussions about when this could happen? And we've seen that Iowa talked about June 1st. They would be bringing their athletes back to campus. Ohio State's summer semester begins July the 9th, or rather June 9th. And typically what would happen is the guys would be in school for part of May, a May semester, go home for a week, and then come back June 9th and really start in for about 8 weeks of both summer classes and 2 or 3 hours a day, 4 days a week, whatever, of conditioning at the practice facility with Mickey Marotti kind of leading the way. And they would have 2 or 3 groups a day go through there. And obviously everything's in a holding pattern right now. A lot of the other sports would do similar things. Basketball, the way Ohio State's academic calendar is structured, there are various summer dates. I think there's another summer semester that begins right after that, probably a little bit later. And the basketball program in recent years hasn't been bringing its guys back until that second date, probably about the 20th or 22nd of June. So it's kind of a staggered academic situation, but what it allows is these guys to get credits in the off season while they're working on their craft, etc. So I talked to him and he said they are hopeful. Nothing has been decided concrete, but they remain very hopeful that they can have their athletes back on campus on or about June 9th. And honestly, that date is not as important this year because Ohio State has decreed that all summer classes will be online at this point. There's no classroom instruction unless it's a laboratory situation or something like that where you have to have hands-on learning or whatever, whatever that may be. Again, I'm just kind of speaking in general terms here. So this is a year, for at least from an academic standpoint, where it's not as important that they are in proximity to the campus area, although it always tied back to the summer football conditioning program that they were joined in one and the same. So whether that date will remain June 9 or whether it'll be pushed back a bit, I heard what Lincoln Riley said, that he thinks June 1st is ridiculous, that they can still have a season if they wait a little while longer, get a little deeper into it, have better precautions, better protocols, and everything else in shape. I saw Ohio University has announced that they will be open for business in the fall, and I think that's an interesting sister institution type thing, both of them state schools in the state of Ohio, and that Ohio University has said that. So a lot of dynamics at play. And I think that we all remain very hopeful that the season will go off literally close to what we think a regular college football season should look like.
Yeah, and I think Lincoln Riley got a lot of, grief or attention for saying June 1 is too early. But he's also saying, I think we're going to play and we can play. But when coaches are talking about, Ryan Day saying 6 weeks is probably the baseline of where teams need, that's kind of what the coaches have talked about, 6 weeks for total of a couple weeks of conditioning and then 4 weeks of practice. And then you start the season. So we're talking mid-June, second week of July rather. So to get players on campus or in the weight rooms by June 1, it is early for what some coaches have agreed is, the July or the 6 week time frame. And I think the fear is, Lincoln Riley's fear is you get in there and then something happens and everybody has to come out. Whereas if you just wait longer and more stuff is found, more you can do things. As we go on, things become more available. PPE stuff becomes more available. Things like that. Where you go right now, you're going to be dealing with issues. I did think it was interesting. Josh Myers. We talked to Josh Myers and Wyatt Davis this week, Ohio State center and guard. And Myers said he would feel safer at Ohio State right now because they would be confined. And his concern as a young person isn't necessarily coming down with COVID, it's passing it on to his parents and to family members. And he said, yeah, it would, you don't want to be away from your family, but he would feel safer because he would not be passing something along to them.
Got Tony Gerdeman on the line from the Ozone, Steve Hillwagon from Bucknuts 247 Sports. As Steve has just let everyone know in the live chat, bring your comments, your questions right now, debate topics, talking Ohio State football. And that was the big headline that caught everybody's attention in regards to Wyatt Davis and Josh Myers making that statement, basically that, you want us to sign a waiver, we'll sign a waiver, whatever you want us to do. We want to play football this year. These guys know, and I'm not discounting other teams across the nation, but this is a pretty special group when it comes to what was accomplished last year, what was nearly accomplished, and the talent coming back. They know that not necessarily that it's now or never, but they have an opportunity to do something special that, again, depending on your perspective last year, they certainly achieved for the most part, but came within a whisker of completing the whole task.
Yeah, no question. I think enough of those players from last year's team are back, including most of a couple of the key wide receivers with Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson. Obviously, the quarterback who was number 3 in the Heisman Trophy balloting and is the top returning vote getter for the Heisman Trophy from last season. He's back, and in a lot of people's minds, a favorite to win the Heisman Trophy. So that's good. Some holes on defense and really critically in the secondary where you only have one starter, Sean Wade, coming back. And yet I think a lot of people look at Ohio State as the prohibitive Big Ten favorite. I've seen a lot of people start to push Wisconsin as, and I think ESPN's FPI has them as a potential top 10 team, if not top 5. And I think some of that could be schedule related. They don't play Ohio State during the regular season, would only play them in the championship game, obviously. I think they play Notre Dame on a neutral field. I want to say that game's at Lambeau Field, which won't necessarily be neutral field, although Notre Dame will have great support there as well, being proximate to Chicago. But I look at it and I think that what you hear those players say is, we have put so much into this, and we collectively as a group have built this program to the point where we don't want to skip a season. We don't want to miss an opportunity to win a national championship and achieve immortality within what we do. And for those two guys, Davis and Myers, they are both potential NFL first or second round draft picks. If they play like they're capable of playing in the 2020 season and dominate like they feel they have a chance to dominate, they play side by side and do an outstanding job in that interior. They lost Jonah Jackson, who plays alongside them, but I think the thought is that Harry Miller, an outstanding sophomore, is going to move right into that spot. So their mind is the offense is just going to pick right up where it left off. There's no J.K. Dobbins, 2,000-yard rusher, but there are a handful of running backs to choose from, I think. So their thought is, any way, shape, or form, both for our team and for our individual growth and for our individual marketability as an NFL commodity, those 3 reasons they want to play. So I think you'll see a lot of people mirror what they had to say.
Yeah, Josh Myers, I think he said it would be devastating if they can't play this year. And those two guys put the NFL on hold for another year. So this is basically their contract year. And they're certainly not alone. So they were expecting to use this season not only to win a national championship, which is the goal, but to advance themselves. And Wyatt Davis, the number 1 guard in the draft, possibly Josh Myers might be the number 1 center. And now they don't get a second year of starting to show that, and they have to make a decision. Do you go now or do you come back? When it's tough for a lot of guys when you go into a season expecting this to be your last, to then have to have another season after that. Generally, they'll go anyway. Damon Arnett was talked out of it, and it worked for him. But there's a lot of guys on this team, and I think just knowing how good they could be and all of the pieces they have returning, and Steve said, the secondary has some question marks but this is Ohio State, and there should be guys there available to fill them out. Ryan Day is desperate for this season based on how last year ended and what he thinks this team can do, and he's not alone. And he's telling this team that this is just a test, and whichever teams are best prepared to go through what they're going through right now, and they come out of this, the teams that come out of this the best, they'll show it on the field this season. And when you look in the rankings in December, it'll be the teams who handled what is going on right now the best. And so that's what they've been doing. It's the whole accountability aspect. It's a test of the culture. It's a test of the program. And Ohio State, they feel pretty good about what they're doing. Now it's a matter of you get them back on campus and you see exactly where everybody stands. But for the most part, I mean, about as well as you could be handling things, I think, is how OSU feels about the situation right now.